Now, from Greater Sandton and beyond, get ready for the Sandton Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond, welcome to the Sandton Times Hour. It's edition 212, week 37 of 2025, and thank goodness we are well into September and things are starting to feel so much warmer. I'm Alexander Leipner, and a very special welcome to you. If you're joining the show this week for the very first time, very special welcome to you. And if you are a regular listener and part of the Sandton Times Hour Nation, well, it's good to have you back. And I've been getting so many messages from listeners who've joined me from previous radio stations, who've known the show on air for the last 3 years, who suddenly rediscovered it again on 919. And it's good to have you join in. Of course, also all of those listening online. But if you are listening across Johannesburg, across Pretoria, South Africa, online or on air, somewhere in the world, wherever you are, I'm happy to report that all is well in Sandton land. And for those who listen regularly, they know Vincenzo is my left-hand man when it comes to the mixing desk and getting our interviews and music lined up for the next hour. So Vincenzo, good to have you back for another week. And congrats, by the way, to Janet, who won the Helios Eros Smokeless Fire Pit on the website. And remember, there's always something happening on the Sandton Times website, so make it part of your regular read, as so many of you do. I think it's about the average person visits the website 6 to 7 times a week, which is amazing. And thank you for doing that, and thanks for always coming back. Talking about coming back, I just got back from a great stay at the Palace of the Lost City to see some of their changes and upgrades that they've made to the hotel, specifically with some help from chef Jan Hendrik van der Westhuizen. You might know him, our very own Michelin star chef. You've seen him on a lot of commercials. He's also got some incredible things happening in terms of crockery and cutlery and his own brand. And the man's a busy man. Cookbooks, the whole lot. He's been upgrading some of the food and beverages at the palace. And there's some more coming up on the website about that. So if you are looking to find out a little bit more, check out the website. But I have to say, the Palace of the Lost City is my spirit animal. It's always such a treat to stay there. I find it's one of South Africa's most iconic hotels. The room that I stayed in, supposedly, rumor has it, was occupied by a pop artist. This is just what goes with the territory. With this kind of hotel, there's a story around every corner. Every item has some sort of provenance. And that was just really just so fantastic. And the team there are basically their hospitality family. I've had a chance to stay there on numerous occasions during my many years in media. And it's so nice to see faces that have been there for such a long time. And every time I see them, they are welcoming. And it's like a big reunion whenever we see them. Graham Beck also launched its new bubbly, Curve Clive X. And if you haven't had Graham Beck, well, let me tell you, go give it a try. I reckon it outperforms some of the international French brands by a mile. Honestly, and you're getting it at such a steal, I mean, it's laughable in terms of the price that you pay for South African Cup Classique. And it is just so good. And they had a lunch at the Saxon Hotel. Once again, an excellent Cup Classique in an excellent setting. And congratulations to the team there on a bubbly that's been 10 years in the making. And the Curve Clive is certainly the pinnacle of all the different Graham Becks that you can get in the range. Then the Hyde Hotel in Rosebank, they turned 1 year old. I can't believe this. Vincenzo, they had a birthday just the other day. That's what it feels like. But they're 1 year old now. I had a chance to go check out their renovated rooms as they brought it in line with the brand. And congratulations to the team there on that anniversary. Then Fly Gabon. I know a lot of people going, where's Gabon? Sort of on the west coast of Africa, close to Equatorial Guinea, sort of that area, if you know where that is. They've got new direct flights now as Fly Gabon launches its route between Johannesburg and Libreville. And they had a little breakfast this past weekend to announce this new development. And they also gave us a tour of their new A320 aircraft. And it looks fantastic. The business class looks amazing. The economy class seats also just wonderful. Flying twice a week to Libreville. Supposedly, I'm told by one of the tour operators, one of the most cost-effective places to see gorillas. I think they've got something like 100,000 gorillas in Gabon. So if you've been thinking about going to go see the gorillas, might be a nice option. And finally, I also attended the Content Creator Africa Festival to stay up to speed on all things social media. I felt like the oldest person in the room, but young at heart. It's been a busy week. What can I say? What are we doing this week? Who are we chatting to? Well, in a bit, I'll be joined by the CEO at the helm of one of South Africa's most beloved Apple retailers to mark a major anniversary. So take a listen for that. A well-known South African musician then joins me straight afterwards. So we chat about his upcoming live performance in the heart of Sandton. Stick around for that. You'll get all the details during that chat. As always, I then catch up with our regular entertainment commentator to chat all things entertainment as we look at some of the latest movies hitting the big screen. And finally, I chat to an actor behind a new one-man play coming to Sandton. And if you've ever thought of immigrating, well, this conversation will be for you. All this and more coming up, and I'd also like to hear from you. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send through your questions or comments, and of course your feedback to editor@sandtontimes.co.za. Connect on social media @Sandton Times on your preferred platform, and then also website www.sandtontimes.co.za, and then our exclusive WhatsApp line. We have our own WhatsApp line for the Sandton Times, 084 Sandton. That's 084 726 3866. Make use of that. And two people who made use of it, and I'm just going to quickly read out their messages. Andre messaged us during the course of last week saying, circling back to what the Wolfman, I think that's Tat's new nickname, the Wolfman, said about stuff not being available on streaming. Well, the Majestic in Greenside is absolutely brilliant, and Henny has a movie knowledge second to none. We get great movies from the Majestic. So, some good advice there from Tat, backed up by Andre, the Majestic in Greenside, if you want to go rent some movies. Then D sent me a message saying, I haven't listened to 919 past Al's show. I think it's Al, your pal, I reckon. But gave up on evening radio. Sorry about that, D. But it is so nice to hear your voice and this show again. Well, D, I hope you're listening again this week. And if you want to be like D and Andre, make sure you send through a message on WhatsApp. If you're not part of the podcast community, be sure to subscribe to the Sandton Times Hour, and you will always get the show on your device, wherever that is. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, AfriPods, Podcast Party. You choose one, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
This year marks a remarkable milestone for one of South Africa's most recognizable tech brand retailers. Since 2005, iStore has been the home to all things Apple in South Africa, bringing not only cutting-edge devices, but also the full Apple experience to customers across the country. And now the brand celebrates 20 years of retailing the world's most valuable tech brand, and I am a self-confessed Apple fan myself, full disclosure. Our conversation comes ahead of the big announcement on September 9th, where Apple's famed and highly anticipated year-end reveal takes place at the Apple Park campus in California, and it's largely considered to be the tech giant's most important moment of the year. And joining me to reflect on iStore's journey and what's next is iStore CEO Chris Dodd. And Chris, it's good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Chris, congratulations on 20 years of iStore. As we look back and as we sit with another big announcement from Apple this week, what is the one Apple launch in South Africa that stands out to you as the most memorable or the most game-changing for the business?
Thank you. And it certainly doesn't feel like 20 years, but here we are. So thank you for that. It's a difficult one to answer. I think, every launch comes with its own excitement and nuance and what have you. But, thinking about it, you think about the iPhone launch in South Africa, globally, the iPhone launch in 2007. That changed the game for certainly iStore and I think Apple as a brand. And if you think back to those earlier days where there were queues and queues of hundreds of people outside the Apple stores all over the world. And the same was true here in South Africa. We had massive queues at most of our flagship stores to get their hands on the latest iPhone when it was also new and people were coming off Blackberries and those sort of devices. So for me, those early days were very, very much the most exciting.
Would you say that iPhone is still that flagship halo product that gets people into the Apple world in South Africa? Or is there another Apple product that seems to be a hot favorite with South Africans?
No, I think you're right. It's still the flagship. A lot of people start with iPhone and then, progress into something else. But yeah, it's very encouraging to see that our numbers are still growing very strongly on iPhone. And it's not only from existing customers rebuying, but We're seeing a lot of new customers. We're seeing a lot of customers trading in their Android devices with us and using that money then to, upgrade into an iPhone. So it's great to see lots of new iPhone customers, but it often is the starting point.
Well, 20 years certainly gives you a lot of data. It also gives you a lot of perspective in terms of how things have changed over the years. How would you say the South African tech consumer has changed over the past 2 decades? And how have you adapted as a business to that evolution?
So if you go back to our first store, which was in 2005 in the waterfront, in those days, technology wasn't really a thing. We might have had some navigation systems and some very basic smartphones, or actually there weren't smartphones in those days, but Blackberries and those types of devices. So tech stores weren't really a thing. And when we did open the store, it was revolutionizing the way customers engage with technology, the ability to touch product, to experience it, to play with it, to get trained on it. I think those, and people were fascinated by it. And look, it's come a long way since then. And I still think there's very much a need to, have products on display, merchandise it properly, give the customers the same ability to touch and feel and look at the various colors and what have you. They're a lot more informed and often know what they want. And, the transactions tend to be a little bit quicker than they were, 10, 15 years ago, where they couldn't set the products up themselves, couldn't transfer the photographs and all those good things. Our customers are very knowledgeable and they can do a lot of that stuff on their own. But we take the opportunity in our retail environments to, update our customers on the latest changes, what's new. And we really try and encourage our customers to get the most out of their devices. And we kind of explore areas where they may not have been before, and that sort of unlocks further value for them.
It's interesting how you've mentioned in terms of educating the public in terms of the Apple products, because I remember those early days, and I remember, especially in a corporate environment, IT departments would frown upon the guy who would rock up with a MacBook or something because they wouldn't sure how to connect it, and then you were sort of left to your own devices to do that. But it feels like there's been a dramatic shift, that Apple is no longer just the brand for the creative director or the artsy guy or the more sort of employee with flair in a company. It feels like it's become more widely accepted in companies, and even the CEO is now seen with a shiny MacBook at his desk.
Yeah, it's a good observation. The CEO comments, often in these large corporates, they were the first to get them because they could, but there were rules for others, and they had to wait in line. But it's a good observation, and we have a totally separate team. It's called iStore Business. And they just look after large enterprises and the business side of things. Probably one of their biggest successes has been in the financial sector, which you wouldn't expect. And so, yes, Apple has done full circle. Apple was often criticized for being expensive in the early days. If you look at it today, like for like, spec for spec, it's actually way cheaper than a lot of devices. I mean, we were selling MacBook M1 Airs at our opening of our relaunched Menlyn store last weekend for 11,000 Rand. I mean, I can't remember when last we sold computers at that price, but it was probably at least 10 or more years ago. And a lot of the computers are now under sort of 20,000 Rand, which is which makes them a lot more affordable. And that has certainly opened up the consumer market. It's opened up the corporate, the SME market. And you're now starting to see Macs in many more business environments.
I mean, with an announcement coming, the big question is always then, well, how quickly are we going to get whatever is announced into South Africa? How important is South Africa in the global Apple economy? Where do we fit into the hierarchy when it comes to sort of priority markets?
I think you're going to have to ask Apple that question. But I'll tell you from my own experiences that, having been at most of these launches here in South Africa of new products, we've kind of slowly seemed to have moved our way up the ladder, and in the last 2 years, South Africa has in fact launched iPhones before the US, just because of the timing. We open earlier than they do. Yeah, so we launched on the same day as the US, essentially. Whether that will be repeated this year, who knows? I only know what the product is when when you watch the announcement. And we know timing, we know product, we only know that at the point of the announcement. Before that, it's all speculation and what everyone's reading in the press. So, yeah, I'm excited for whatever's coming, and hopefully it follows similar trends to the past in terms of timing.
Well, we will wait and see. And as we reflect on 20 years of iStore, Chris Dodd, congratulations to you and the team. And certainly a place to go to once we know what those products are going to be. And I'm sure it's going to be a hot seller for the festive season, which is almost upon us. So, Chris Dodd, thank you so much for making the time to be on the Sandton Times Hour.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's a good question because lots of people have asked us that, what are you going to do going forward?
That's a great question.
Two critically important questions.
Such a great and interesting question.
I have not even thought about that until you've just said it.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
An unforgettable night of music, energy, and connection awaits as Ross Learmonth takes the stage at the Capitol on the Park on Saturday, 27th of September in Sandton. Ross, also known as the unmistakable voice and former frontman of Prime Circle, takes the stage, riding high on a landmark year that has seen him open for the Goo Goo Dolls, headline the R&B Starlight Classics in Cape Town, and step into the spotlight with a solo debut at the Kirstenbosch Gardens, also in Cape Town. Internationally, he sold out a show at Shepherd's Bush in London and cemented his reputation as one of South Africa's most captivating performers, and might I add, also voices. Ross joins me on the line right now, and welcome to the Sandton Times Hour, Ross.
Thank you. It's good to be on the call. Nice introduction. It's been a year.
Ross, if you need an opening act, here it is.
Yeah.
Ross, let's quickly just delve into this. I mean, as part of that introduction, I obviously mentioned that you were the front man and the unmistakable front man of Prime Circle. Is that something you've had to work through now, obviously post leaving the band, creating your own solo career? Is it something that you like to hang on to, or is it something where you go, look, that's something that I did, but now this is me and I'm sort of doing my own thing?
I think it's a bit of both. I celebrate the time that I had and the songs I've written, and I still perform some of the songs. Every now and then I'll throw in a couple of different ones that people didn't expect. But I just think it's a musical journey, and it's been amazing to focus on new ideas and new energy.
Well, look, you've got the show coming up at Capitol on the Park. When I first read this, I had to read it sort of 2 or 3 times because one of the things that I always miss about Greater Sandton is that we just don't have this kind of venue that you have in places like London or Dubai or Paris, where it's purpose-built entertainment, live music venues. We used to have the Blues Room in Village Walk, which is
Room, I was thinking that. Yeah.
What a vibe. We don't have that anymore, and now we're obviously finding new spaces to perform in. What makes this particular space and show different from some of the other stuff you've done?
I think this one's going to be a walkthrough of the songs from beginning till now. So I think it gives quite a journey. I'll have the amazing Jude Kendrick on drums with me as well, who's just amazing. Amazing. He's such a great performer. So he's there to help me sort of tell this story and go through this journey, which is going to be, I can't wait for it.
You've done some incredible things, as I say, since you've left Prime Circle. I mean, we were just mentioning the Goo Goo Dolls, R&B style classics, performing overseas as well. Is this something that you obviously hope to have done post the band, but was this something where you weren't quite sure if your career was going to be quite the same after leaving?
Yeah, it was very scary. It only hit me when I was at a Corin Zoid show, and she looked at me from the stage and said, "Ross is now solo. It's very brave." And then she paused and looked at me with the eyes and said, "It's very brave." And I sort of felt the weight of it. But I always knew that my musical journey was calling for something more. I didn't want to just be the guy from Prime Circle. And I think it was important that for my musical self and just my emotional and sanity that I did this. So it's been quite an amazing, extraordinary finding myself,
The song Heavy Love, I believe, started as a voice note, which you described as a very unproductive day in studio. Do you often find that your ideas come unexpected, unplanned, don't keep office hours sort of moments?
Definitely, yeah. I wish it would have that day, but I'm glad I was listening. I feel that like the songs are definitely around, it's also a frame of mind. It's a state of being. I think sometimes when you're writing. So for me in the studio that day, just nothing was hitting it. Just, you question everything you're doing. And then on the way home, it hit. And I was just sort of having that moment and put myself in the right frame of mind. I think I've always believed the songs were sort of out there to find.
What made you decide to do something in a space like Capital on the Park? Like I said, it's not really a typical music venue or typical live performance venue. What do you think the space is going to add to the fan experience?
I think we've had to, as performers, we've had to sort of reach in for something a little bit more exciting for people and something a little bit more in-depth and personal and something that is exclusive. Exclusivity is everything. And I think that's what this show is going to bring. I'm going to be performing songs that no one's ever heard. And I think it's just more, it's now time to sort of give more to the audience. And I think this venue, like you've said, there isn't anything in the area like that. So we have to create our own sort of narrative and space. And I think this is such a beautiful venue to do it.
How do you approach South African audiences compared to some of your international audience? And I'm taking a little bit of a guess, and I'm assuming also a lot of your international audience are also South African expats looking for that taste of home when they're sitting in places like Dubai or Auckland or London.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the difference. I think when you're touring through like Germany and that you see more, I noticed a lot more German fans there. And then you sort of move towards Amsterdam and you start to hear more South African. And, it depends on certain shows. Sometimes it's that kind of the people that have that nostalgic thing that they're searching for, which is quite nice when you get to go and see the South Africans and go find them all around the world.
What's the one song that you really enjoy performing over and over again, even though you've heard it a gazillion times?
I mean, hello, even. I think it's just that song. Since I was a youngster, I wrote this song in like standard 8, which gives my age away when I say standard 8. But I think it's been a part of my life for so long. I mean, even that, a song that I've played probably 1 trillion times. Whenever you have when a crowd gets involved, it's that kick, it's that thing.
I was going to say, does it also help that probably half the song the crowd sings and you just sort of like play along?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it gives you a good time, yeah.
Do you have any really stand-up memories of your solo career so far that you've really just kind of lingered on because it's just been such a special moment?
I have. It's been it's such a nice ego thing. You have to check yourself and have to really decide a way to start again. And I think a lot of that has been my traveling and sort of the time alone to find sort of my new direction and sound. So that's sort of also been an amazing thing for me. But performing something like at Kirstenbosch and having to just perform new things and believe in what I'm doing. I think there's every moment now like that is just standing out so beautifully.
Well, if you want to relive or live one of those moments, it's happening on the 27th of September right here in Sandton, the Capital on the Park. Ross Learmonth will be performing some of his old tracks, some of his new tracks. And Ross, it's been such a pleasure having you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
Taking you into the second half of the Sandton Times Hour, my name is Alexander Leipner, and if there's anything that sounded intriguing on this week's show, but you didn't get all the details, don't despair. You can hop onto the website sandtontimes.co.za and check out the show notes for a detailed breakdown of everything discussed on the show this week. Also, be sure to check out the social media accounts at Sandton Times if you want to see some images, some videos, and some further reading, as well as save our WhatsApp number 084 Sandton. That's 084 726 3866 084 726 3866, and feel free to send through your voice notes, text messages, and so much more, much like some of the people did that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. So that's the exclusive Sandton Times WhatsApp number. It's time to connect with our regular entertainment commentator, Tat Wolfen. And Tat, you've got some interesting stuff lined up for us to entertain us in the coming week.
I do indeed, my friend. I thought I'd just mention some upcoming shows quickly.
Great.
And at Theatre on the Square, there's a one-man show coming up with a fellow called Benno. But I'm not going to say too much about that because I know you've got Benno waiting to interview him straight after we're done, after the break.
That's right, yeah. We're going to have the full interview with the lead actor.
Excellent. So we'll leave it all up to him. And I think he's the lead and only actor in that show.
That's right.
And then coming up at movie theaters, we have, that is this coming Friday, we have Demon Slayer Infinity Castle which is a new anime movie that the anime fans are getting very excited about. And there's a movie called The Long Walk, which is based upon a Stephen King short story, which in essence is about a group of students who go on this annual walk where if you flag and fall out, you get shot.
Oh.
So it sounds a bit like my high school, really.
Gosh.
But I thought there were very interesting preview screenings held in the US. They showed the movie in these sort of gym rooms, which they had filled with these electric treadmills, which were set to 3 miles per hour. So you had to watch the movie while you were walking. And if you turned off your treadmill or stepped off it, then you were escorted out of the screening room.
Way more humane, and at least you're working off that Coke and popcorn at the same time. So it's sort of like a zero-sum equation.
Yeah, and as you say, more humane, a little more merciful than getting shot. And then finally, there's a movie called Code 3 Opening, which is a comedy about an ambulance driver that looks as though it might be fun to catch once it goes onto streaming, but I'm not sure. Unfortunately, I haven't seen a preview for it, so I've seen the trailer, and it kind of looks, could be fun, but is it worth driving out to a movie house? I don't know.
Okay.
But if you haven't seen The Roses yet, which is still on circuit, and my review, incidentally, has been on sandtontimes.co.za for some time now.
Yep.
It really is worth seeing. It's a remake of Danny DeVito's movie was it like 1989, I think it was, which was called War of the Roses, and it was based on a book of the same name. When I say it was Danny DeVito's movie, he had directed that movie and he appeared in it. But this is a British remake with Benedict Cumberbatch and Olivia Colman, and it tells of the romance made in heaven, which swiftly descends into the romance made in hell. It's a dark comedy, but I found about halfway through I was forgetting to laugh because it really is hectic. So if you have a strong constitution, it's certainly a very well-made movie and entertaining, but in the darkest way possible. The Roses.
I feel like your next movie is going to have a similar sort of payoff line.
Yeah, also for strong constitutions, yeah. And it's not even a dark comedy. So The Conjuring, The Last Rites, and incidentally, if you want to go into my more detailed review, you will, of course, find that on sandtontimes.co.za, where you'll find anything worth knowing, won't you, Alex?
Absolutely, that's it.
Yeah, so The Conjuring, The Last Rites is the fourth of a quadrilogy, I guess, starring Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, and it's based upon a real life couple, the Warrens, who had been very active in the 80s, dealing with people whose homes were apparently demon possessed. Okay, so there was controversy around this then, and there is still controversy around this now. Were these things real demon possessions, or was it schizophrenic people? And I know that Mr. Warren, Ed Warren, did have a brain operation or whatever. So you can't be entirely sure, did these things really happen or didn't they? But, when you watch a movie, you have to suspend disbelief.
Yeah.
So even if you're not particularly persuaded by that kind of thing, you go along with the movie. And as I say, it's the last of a quadrilogy, but it's part of what they call a universe these days, where you have these, it started off with like the science fiction movies, the Star Wars movies and the Marvels movies. But now if any movie has more than a couple of sequels, they start to talk about that universe. Okay. And part of this universe of movies is also the Annabelle movies, which was about Annabelle the doll that was demon possessed and all that kind of thing. But what I liked about this movie is that it's not just your standard conveyor belt horror. Firstly, Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are more serious actors.
Right.
And also there are other elements to this movie. I like the fact that they've injected into this last movie because after all, it is called The Conjuring, The Last Rites. But they've brought in some family elements. So the couple now has a daughter. Well, they have two daughters, I guess, in their 20s. But their baby daughter, in inverted commas, has this boyfriend. And the father regards him with suspicion in the same way as any father would regard a daughter's boyfriend, right? He's like, is this young fellow good enough for my baby? So there's that lovely little dynamic in there. And there are a few nice laughs in the movie. And the movie is also centered in family values. So it's not just, yes, there certainly are scenes in there that are horrific. You definitely don't want to take young kids to see this movie. Yes, the horror is there, and the scare bits are there as well. I must tell you, there were a couple of parts in that movie where my blood ran cold. So yeah, it works as a script flick, but it does have this other human element as well, and stresses the importance of family and the support of family. And whereas a lot of horror movies these days are just sick and disturbing,
Yeah.
So I like that, and that did draw me in. So this is the horror movie with extra.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Comes with a nice side order of healthy vegetables.
So one battle of good and evil, and then there's also The Conjuring as well, which is also along a similar line.
Well, I think The Rose is the union of two good people that ends up becoming a battle between two demons, between this husband and wife who absolutely, want to get at one another's throats. Yeah, and The Conjuring, The Last Rites is, a battle between good and evil with some nice human elements thrown in as well.
All right, Tat. Well, if you want to read up more, as Tat highlighted on the website, sandtontimes.co.za. And Tat Wolfen, it's always good to have you on the show, and catch you again next week.
So are you now going to exorcise me into endless night? Is that what you're about?
Ah, Tat, I see what you did there.
Okay. Cheers.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
After taking his latest solo show, Becoming Benno, to international acclaim with awards from Adelaide to Grahamstown, South African actor and Australian Global Artistic Talent Visa recipient Ben Voss brings his deeply personal, hilarious and moving production home to Sandton from the 17th to the 28th of September 2025. Set in the tense limbo of an Australian immigration interrogation room, if you can handle it, the story captures the fears, hopes and absurdities of starting over in a new country. With only 7 kilograms of hand luggage and his wit, Ben plays a cast of characters that reflect on identity, belonging and what it really means to reinvent yourself. It's theatre with heart, humour and plenty of South African soul, and I'm delighted to have Ben with us to talk about Becoming Benno, his journey and why the show resonates with anyone who's ever asked the big question, do I stay or do I go? Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Ben, you're coming to the Sandton Theatre on the Square. What does it mean for you to bring back a show like this onto home soil after having so much international success?
Interestingly, the show was written for an international audience. So it was written for Australians. And it was quite bizarre to bring it back because it felt like the content in some ways favored Australia because originally I was touring to the Adelaide Festival. And now that I'm doing it for South Africans, I've been amazed at how open-hearted the South Africans are to the content. It's actually been such a fantastic response. And I'm very happy with how South Africans are taking it because without giving too much away, there's an element of moving to another country. And that sometimes can feel like rejection for our home crowd, but it's not. And this character is built so that it's not.
Let's get into that, Ben. I mean, the show was born out of your real life journey of moving to Australia. How much of Benno is you and how much of it is sort of dramatic effect or theatre?
The character is me. The sort of feel of the guy, the voice of the central character. I play a multitude of characters, but the guy who holds it together, Ben, is me, a South African, born and bred, loves the country, but the setting itself is obviously hypothetical. I've never been trapped in an interrogation room for hours on end and drilled and grilled about why I should be allowed into the country and why I shouldn't, and the validity of my visas and what I'm carrying in my hand luggage. And that is a theatrical device to create tension so that the audience are unsure what's going to happen to this poor every man, every South African man, of the sort of guy who's, you know, looking for a new life, looking for an adventure. His family are there. He's got connections there already. To some extent, he's rejecting South Africa, but he's also missing it and longing for it and wondering if he's making the right call. So the character is real. He comes with the same fears I have. He comes with the same funny outlook on life that I have. The environment and the theatrical suspense is obviously all made up. And I think that combination is what makes it such a great piece, is that you like the guy because he's very close to who I am and he's very real. And not that I'm necessarily so likable, but just that I'm trying to be as honest and clear and beautiful and humble and humorous as I can. And so they like him, but then he's suddenly in this environment where we sort of all can relate to it on some level, whether it's a cop trying to get a bribe out of you at a stop street, whether it's, you know, you trying to get your passport stamped at Home Affairs, this sort of bureaucratic hurdles that we have to go through in life as people who are just trying to get through our daily thing. And I think that's the joy of it, is people go, sheepers, come on, guy, you can do it, man. You're going to make it. You're going to see your family. You're going to get through. And yet as South Africans, we don't necessarily want him to get through because we're feeling like, hey, why are you making that choice?
Let's talk about the relating bit, because I mean that's something that certainly ran through my mind when I first read about this particular piece. Is that, you know, I'm certain that there's plenty of people listening right now that have been through that process, either during lockdown, load shedding, hitting a pothole sometime during the day, you know, a close encounter with crime and violence, where they've said, you know what, I've had it, that's it, I'm done, I'm moving to wherever, you know, pick a country, any country, and the process of moving to another country isn't as straightforward as many might like. I mean, apart from the fact that there's a lot of paperwork and regulatory things that you have to jump through, but it's the matter of building up a whole new credit history. I mean, you are not known, you are a complete nobody when you go to another country. I mean, you basically start at the bottom. The banks don't know you, the stores don't know you, your neighbors don't know you. You have to integrate into society, into a job, into you know, a new government, on all different angles. And as exciting as it might sound, it is actually probably more challenging and a bit of a burn the bridges and no turning back exercise than many might think.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that.
Just as a word of encouragement.
Great. Yeah. I hear you 100%. That's what everybody says. And my experience of my limited experience to date is that I feel very uneasy. I feel nervous. I'm trying, you know, just like getting contacts with theaters over there. There's a different language that comes with email. Like Australians tend to say things like, "Oh, thank you so much for reaching out." But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to take your hand. Like, they're so friendly, and you feel like through the email that, oh my gosh, I've got this, and then like it gets taken away from you. It's sort of, there's a real genialness, there's a gentleness to their language, which us South Africans just like, hey, send me the script, Ben. You know, whereas they are like, hi, I hope you've had a lovely day. I hope you're having a good time, and that we've got a lovely day here in Melbourne. Would you mind possibly passing on the script to me when you have at your convenience? And so the language, already I'm feeling that, the financial burden of it. But the biggest thing is letting go of the place that is home that I do actually trust. Like, I trust South Africa. I've been here for years. I trust myself in South Africa. I love South Africa. And I think the reason one chooses to go and to take on those things that you've said, those challenges of new culture, starting at the bottom, poor credit history, what is the reason? And there are a couple of fundamental ones, some of them cliched. The first is I have a child who I feel does stand a good chance in the world if she's got a dual citizenship for South Africa and Australia. I just think she gets more options from both sides. The second thing is one of South Africa's problems, and I don't want to diss this place because I adore it and it's given me everything I need. But we've got to be clear that we rebound, in my opinion, too quickly. So, you know, take the riots here in Durban, which the rest of the country didn't really feel to the extent that we did. We had 400 of our own civilians dead in the streets and probably more. A week later, South Africans are on Facebook going, we're incredible, We can just bounce back. Nothing gets us down. We defended our homes. What do you defend your homes against? Against other South Africans, against people who are dying in the streets. And there's the sense of South African geest, the pride, the Springboks, which I adore. I scream for the Springboks. I want them to win. But we cannot keep our heads in the sand. We need to ensure, and this is what my story is about. My story is about making sure that I take South Africa to the world and keep that story being told so that people are aware that this country has foibles, but it also has beauty. And we can't deny the foibles just because, because we want to feel happy in the day and we feel like we need it to get through the day. We're better than that. We're better than that. We can create change and difference and tell stories that create change. That's the second reason why I'm prepared to take on those things that you mentioned. Those is that sense of, I think there is a slight denialism in South Africa. I don't ever want to let go of South Africa. I'm going to come back here. I've got family here. I've got huge love and connection and career here. But I want to also take South Africa to the world, I want to be proudly South African over there in an environment that gives me and my family extra options. Not better options, not more options, not better options. Options.
Well, there is something quite magical about a one-man show. I must say, I've always quite enjoyed that because it's kind of painting pictures with what isn't there instead of what is there. And you play multiple characters in this particular piece, obviously set in a immigration interrogation room, which in itself is pretty sparse and probably pretty cold at the best of times. And it's up to your acting skills and your dramatic background to paint in the color and the pictures and the warmth of this room with these different characters. Becoming Benno is coming to Theatre on the Square. It's on from the 17th to the 28th of September 2025. Tickets are available on web tickets. And I think it's going to be great, Ben, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, so I know we've had a very serious discussion, but it's actually a pretty funny show, right? I do love comedy. So while we've had quite an intense discussion, the humor of, what we see in Australians, what Australians see in us is all there, but with this heartfelt story of a guy who's making a massive life change also thrown in there.
And I think that's the beauty of live theatre, right? The drama in the humour and the humour in the drama. And Ben Voss, it's been a pleasure having you on the Sandton Times Hour. Thank you.
Thank you so much for talking to me, man.
All right, let's wrap it all up for another Sandton Times Hour and another week. Feel free to send through your questions, comments, and feedback on email, editor@sandtontimes.co.za. Connect on social media @Sandton Times. Use the WhatsApp number 084-SANTON, that's 084-726-3866, the exclusive Sandton Times WhatsApp line for your voice notes and text messages. And of course, don't forget to visit the website, sandtontimes.co.za. You can subscribe to the podcast too on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and any other leading digital audio platforms, and join the growing community online. Thank you to all my guests who made time to be on the show this week, as well as the team behind the scenes pulling it all together. A special thank you to you for listening, and God willing, we'll do it all again next week.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening to the Sandton Times Hour. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share it.